Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Welcome. Glad you're out. So yeah, a couple things while we have it, because there is some interactive type stuff going on in this program. You might want to have a pencil and paper with you, just in case to do some stuff, write down some stuff. I will have the chat box open, and I will have my participants box open, because there's times where I'm going to ask you some questions, and you can either give me a thumbs up or a hand up, or you can put in the chat. In fact, the chat would be great, because I'll need some specific numbers and things like that for you. We are going to be talking about memory. I will be talking about how our memory works and how it doesn't work. And I won't be talking much about Alzheimer's, because that's a whole different kind of thing. But we'll talk that, and we'll kind of show you how you can maybe use your memory a little bit better too later on. So I am going to start out first with showing you a bunch of faces. You're going to see them each for just a second. And later on in the program, then we will talk more about them. So here we go. Okay, and we'll get back to those later. We want to talk a little bit about your brain and how it works. This is kind of an extension of my Mind Games 1 and Mind Games 2 programs. I want to talk about one person in particular. His name is Patient HM. Now, the reason why he was first called HM is because when he was alive, they only used the patient's initials. His real name is Henry Malaysian. And he is vital to our understanding of memory, and how memory kind of is an essential part of our humanity. So Henry had a bike accident at age 10. And sometime after that, he started having seizures. By age 27, those seizures were out of control. And so he looked for some help. Now, this is in 1953. And the surgeon he went to that he thought might help him was Dr. William Scoville. He was a brilliant surgeon, and just so also a lobotomy enthusiast. And so his whole idea was that to find the parts of the brain that cause you to either be crazy or give you these seizures or whatever, and excise those parts to hopefully cure whatever psychological or physiological problems you're having. And so Henry agreed to try and solve this, because he couldn't function in the world with having these terrible seizures. And so they went in to try and figure out what area of the brain was where the seizures were located. And William Scoville couldn't find it. So he decided to suck out the hippocampus, even though he really didn't know what the hippocampus did, and no one did at that time. Now, the hippocampus itself is that little kind of dark yellow, partially with the amygdala. It's named after the seahorse, and it's about 1/100th of our brain, but it's very dense with neurons. And what we will find out is that they didn't know at the time, but the hippocampus is important to making memories stick. Without it, you would be sort of like a video camera without a tape head. You'd see, but you couldn't record. And but he sucked it out, and the seizures abated. Seizures pretty much stopped, and Henry's personality was the same. But very quickly, they figured out that he had serious memory problems going on. Now, his long-term memory was pretty much normal, but he did lose about 10 years of his most recent memories. But most profound was his short-term memory. He could not form new memories. So he was permanently in the present. As soon as whatever thing he learned or heard was gone from his short-term memory, if he heard it again, it would be like the first time ever hearing it. On the other side, his IQ was still normal. He was a very high IQ person. His motor skills were just fine. His language was fine, except he couldn't learn new words. And his childhood memories were still there, except there was an odd part. You know, normally when we describe our childhood memories, we feel like we're part of them. We explain them like we're part of them. He would talk about his childhood memories as he was outside looking in. He wasn't really part of them. So after this, he went home, healed, tried to live this way, but scientists obviously started to do testing with him. And one of the tests they gave him, now there's no sound in this video, but I just want to give you an example of one of the tests that they gave him, which was pretty remarkable. And that is the star test. They have a star printed on a piece of paper, two lines. And you have to draw in between those two lines another star. But you don't look directly at the paper, you're actually looking at a mirror. And this is actually a really difficult task to do. But Henry Molaison started off and it was really bad. They would do this for him 14 times a day. And every time they would do the test, it would be like he never did the test before. He never realized that he did the test, never remembered doing the test. But after several days, he would start to get better and better at the task. Even though he didn't remember it, his outline got better and better each time until he could do the test perfectly. He was amazed that he could do the test perfectly. So it gave us real insight on how our memory works and the types of memory we have. So we really have a sort of two types of memory. Implicit memory, which is like riding a bike. You don't have to think about riding a bike. It's unconscious. It's wired into you once you learn how to ride a bike. Many of those physical tasks, like drawing that star, became an implicit memory. We have explicit memories. And there's two different versions of these. Semantic, which are facts, numbers, dates, words. And episodic, time, personal experiences. Well, his episodic memory really didn't exist properly. His semantic memory did. And that's when he described his childhood memories, it was more like relating a series of facts. He understood dates. He could remember World War II and all that kind of stuff. So it changed how we understood memories in our brain. The belief at the time was that memories were all over our brain. But it turns out that they're actually in different sections. So let's imagine you're a violinist and you're giving a recital. The temporal lobe, which is the amygdala and the hippocampus, which help encode those memories. And when you recall those memories, it reaches into all those different parts, and the hippocampus helps bring them all together to put together the entire memory. But of course, if you remember, if you know, your brain can make mistakes. And one of the mistakes of memory, we call the Mandela Effect. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and I want you to pick which one is the real picture. It's going to be one or two. So in the chat, this is really important, open up your chat box. I want you to put a 1 or a 2 in which you think is the correct picture. So Fruit of the Loom, is picture 1 correct or is picture 2 correct? You can put that in the chat, please. Kat, thank you very much. You put 1. We need some more. 1 we got. 1 we got. 1, 1, 1. Well, I hate to break it to you. Well, Michelle got it right. 2 is correct. The Fruit of the Loom logo has never had a cornucopia in it. Never in its history had a cornucopia in it. But people remember it that way for some reason. I have another one for you. Is it Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes? Is it 1 or 2? We got a 1 there, we got a 1 there, we got a 1 there. We got a 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. And that is actually 2 is correct in there. It's not about cartoons. It was very musically related at the early days. One of my favorite, the Monopoly Man. Does he have a monocle or doesn't he have a monocle? Okay, we got a 2, we got a 2, we got a 2. And Michelle, you got that one right again. He does not have a monocle. Never has. Now I'm going to something you've seen probably every day of your life. You may have seen this next one. This is by letter, which is the correct penny. Yeah, a lot more to sort out there, so it's okay to be wrong. Don't worry. Most people are. We got a couple D's in there. We got an A in there. We got a G. The correct was F in there. So there's many examples of the Mandela effect. And there are people that have this unshakable belief that the Monopoly Man has a monocle, or that there's a cornucopia in the Fruit of the Loom logo. But this is actually your brain kind of piecing together memory fragments, but some of it is a little wrong, inaccurate. So we're going to talk about forgetting. We're constantly retrieving memories throughout the day. You're remembering where you parked your car, where you fed, if you fed the cat, if you called your mom because it's her birthday. It takes a lot of work to retrieve those memories from long-term storage. And the truth is, a lot can go wrong along the way. To understand all the many fascinating ways you forget things, I guess we first really need to talk about why we remember things. And see, our brain didn't really evolve to remember phone numbers or names of dozens of strangers or the name of this program. Our brain evolved to find food, the route home, which plants are edible and which are poisonous. And our eyes aren't perfect cameras. And our brains aren't perfect recorders. We only really record a very small amount of the information that's coming in our brains. And when we recall, it's not like picking up a book or watching a DVD. Your memories are more like a spider web, a series of interconnected associations all over the place that link all sorts of diverse things. And as bits of information get stuck to other bits of information, it can get mixed up there. So I want to talk about the stages of encoding and retrieval can be messy. For example, perhaps you saw a car crash. The cues to the police want to talk to you afterwards. The cues to kind of remembering it could be that it was cold, that it was night, there was a full moon. Bruce Springsteen was playing on the radio. All those bits of information are in your web of memory. The weather, the song, the plates, they can serve as retrieval cues, kind of like a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to a particular memory. The more retrieval cues you can inadvertently or intentionally build along the way, the better you can backtrack and find the memory you're looking for. Context-dependent memory, they call that, going back to the place where that first thought happened. So I'm going to give you an example here. How many people know what movie this picture is from? If you think you know, you put me, or you can raise your hand on this one too, because I can see if I can like turn that on and off in the attendees thing. There we go. We got it. Got one up. Should be able to clear that. Okay, we got a couple in there. So this is Saving Private Ryan. And this was one of the earliest things that connected me to doing a memory program. The reason is because in the movie, Private Ryan hears that his brothers have died. And he starts talking, he's sitting there in a quiet moment in the war, And he's talking to the Tom Hanks character and telling him he's trying to picture his brother's faces, but he can't think of them. He can't see them. Well, Tom Hanks's character tells him to think of the context and make the associations. So imagine them like at home, or you're playing baseball with them, or at a picnic, or some event that happened with them. And when he created that context, he could then picture the faces of his brothers. And that's exactly what you can do. Happens to us all the time, in fact. And we'll talk about a couple ways you can do this, because I want to have some practical stuff in here. You're in your house, you're in the kitchen, and you have to go get something from the bedroom. So you go over to the bedroom and you can't remember what you need. What am I doing in here? There's two ways we can deal with this. We could go back to the area where you first thought of the thing that you needed and try and figure out from the context there where you're at what you needed. I've done that. It works. The other thing you can do is, if you want to remember what you need from one room to the next, repeat it to yourself as you go through, like the doorway or something, because they think the doorway is sort of what erases your short-term memory. So as you move from one scene to the next, one area to the next, repeat that thing that you need, and you won't forget it as you get to this new place, and your short-term memory won't be erased at that point. Now, as you're encoding memories, your state of mind, your emotions can color how you encode memories and whether you can retrieve them or how you'll retrieve them. So if you're mad, they may be very different than when you're happy. A couple other things that go into this. There's something called the primacy effect and the recency effect, where you'll remember the first and the last things you encounter. So that's why sometimes if you try and memorize a shopping list, you'll remember the first things on the shopping list and the last things, but stuff in the middle will become all muddled. But even with all these kinds of things, things can still go wrong. Your memory can fail, become distorted. And of course, we forget things. We just do. It's a natural part of life. We can't remember everything. But typically, we do it in a few different ways. We fail to encode it. We fail to retrieve it. And we experience what psychologists call storage decay. So think about all the stuff that's going around you at any given moment. We only notice a fraction of what we sense. And we can only consciously hold so many bits of information in our minds at any given time. In fact, for our short-term memory, it's about 7 things plus or minus 2. So 5 things is an okay short-term memory, 7 is average short-term memory, 9 is really good short-term memory. So what we fail to notice, we tend not to encode, and thus we don't remember. And we only ever remember things in fragments anyhow. And then again, even memories encoded can be vulnerable to storage decay or the natural forgetting over time. And interesting, even though we can forget things pretty quickly, a lot of things, about 50% in just a few days, the amount of that data we forget actually levels off after some time. Now, this was a comparison of like everyday memories with memories of 9/11. People who had memories of 9/11. One day after 9/11, they interviewed people to give details about the 9/11 thing. And you would think that something so insane, so important, so emotional, you would remember a lot more of it. But a year later, their memory degraded just like an everyday memory would degrade. So the day after, they had like 14 consistent details. A year later, they only had 6 consistent details when they described their experiences around 9/11. And a lot of times, forgetting doesn't mean our memory faded to black. It means we can't call it up on demand because of retrieval failure. And there's a couple different proactive interference. So sometimes the old stuff that you learned keeps you from recalling new stuff. Like if you change one of your passwords, but keep recalling your old one every time you try to log in, That's proactive or forward-acting interference. The flip side is retroactive or backward-acting interference, which happens when new learning gets in the way of recalling old information. So for example, you learned French in high school, but now you start studying Spanish. But the Spanish interferes with the French that you already learned. That is retroactive interference. You see, every memory, there's a lot of reconstruction and inferring involved when you try to flesh out a memory. Every time you replay it in your mind or relate it to a friend, it changes just a little. So all perpetually rewriting our pasts. And because memory is both a reconstruction and reproduction, we could never be completely sure if a memory is real just because it feels real. This is a really kind of scary thing because our memories make us who we are. But this is an inevitable part of how every time we recount a memory, we rewrite that memory and we change details in it. Sometimes this misleading information gets incorporated into a memory and twists the truth. So we're going to have a little word game. I'm going to read off these 3 lists of words, and then I'll have some questions about some words for you. So we'll start. I'll start with list number 1, go to list number 2, and then list number 3. Hill, valley, climb, summit, top, molehill, peak, plain, glacier, goat, bike, climber, range, steep, ski. 2 is table, sit, legs, seat, couch, desk, recliner, sofa, wood, cushion, swivel, stool, sitting, rocking, bench. 3, bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, drowsy. Okay, now I want to ask you about some words here, whether you heard them or not, whether you remember hearing them or not. The word top, if you remember hearing it, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay. How about the word, you can put your hands down now, clear that. And then we want the word chair. Word chair, you got to pop up there, okay. You can clear those. And the word sleep. Okay, we'll clear those. The word seat. Okay, we can clear those. The word slow. Okay, we'll clear those. The word strong. Nobody heard that one. How about the word yawn? How about the word, we'll clear them. How about the word mountain? And last, we'll clear those again and we'll get the word sweet. Okay, we can clear that. We can clear the hands. And now here's the thing. The word top, seat, and yawn are words that were in the lists. The word slow, sweet, and strong were not in the lists at all. And the word chair, mountain, and sleep were also not in there, but they sound like they should be in there. And that is kind of showing how our short-term memory is bad, but how also, if you get all these words that are very similar, we can actually create sort of a false memory in your mind. Because with that first list, mountain would fit right in. It seems like it belongs. The second list, chair and sleep and so on. This is a good example of how our memories work and how all of a sudden we have these extra memories in there. And so it's easy then to kind of not always believe other people's memories of what we said or they said or that sort of thing, because all of our memories are kind of get misleading information in there. Another good example is, I'm sure you all heard of the DNA Project, the Innocence Project, where they've gotten people off of death row because DNA evidence had cleared them of a crime. Well, it turned out that 70% of those that were exonerated were convicted on eyewitness testimony alone. Yet they were never there. That's how corruptible your memory is, that you could send someone to death row from just your memory. My life story, your life story, is all the memories we can recall and reconstruct. And this graph kind of shows the life story of a typical 70-year-old. There's lots of recent memories from the recent past. There are a few memories from childhood, but none around the age of 3 or 4 years old. You have no memories before the age of 3. So if anyone says they have memories that they remember when they were 2 years old and stuff, they don't. That's a manufactured memory. And part of the reason why we don't have memories before 3 years old is because something called neurogenesis. Our cortex is really being created at that point and sucking in everything and making them implicit memories. We can't really keep and form any of those other kinds of memories, the explicit ones, the episodic ones in particular. And so because your brain is in overdrive, creating these billions of memories to keep up with the coding informations in our implicit memories, we can't retain those other things. Now, there's a surprising bump in our teens and our 20s. But it makes a lot of sense. Because when you're getting through high school, you're having lots of momentous occasions, very emotional occasions, your first crushes, the first thing you learn. So much new information is coming to you at that time. And when we think about our life stories, those big change moments are the ones that stand out the most and define us and give us the feeling we know those better than others. Now, we've had enough time, and just like we did with the Mandela Effect, I'm going to show you 2 faces at a time, and I'll see how many of you can remember which ones I showed you and which ones I didn't. So just put your number in the chat. Okay, we got a 2, we got a 1, 1, 1. And number 1 was correct. We'll do the next one, 1 or 2. Overwhelmingly 2, and you are correct. Very good. Faces are the most important thing for human beings to recognize. So generally, this faces test is a little bit easier. You didn't have to remember names of people and things like that. We got 1, 1, 1s, overwhelmingly 1s, and that is correct. Okay, we're kind of split in this one. Number 1 was correct on that one. This is my favorite one because I cheated neither of those. You saw neither of those. But you so bad assume that I did that you actually believed you remembered seeing one of them. Overwhelmingly twos, and that's correct. Last one, I think this is. That's because we trusted me. Yes, that was a mistake. And one is correct on that one. So let's talk a little bit of history of memory. And memory techniques, and some of the memory techniques I'm going to talk about have been as old as classical education, mostly because books weren't as readily available. So you had to memorize all these important texts and poems and facts and whatever. So Simonides of Chios is one of the most famous stories of what I call memory hacking, or how our memory works, or how people remember things. And he was attending a banquet. And for some reason, he was called outside the banquet. And when he left the banquet hall, something happened, and the entire roof collapsed. The stone roof collapsed on everyone, and people were smashed. Because they were so badly, the bodies were so badly damaged, they couldn't really identify who was who. Simonides went into the room then, kind of closed his eyes and visualized the banquet that he was in. And he could visualize each person and where they were sitting, and was able to identify where each person was so their families could get the bodies that they needed. And that is now called the method of loci. We also call it the memory palace. And it's the idea of being able to place things in a certain spot, an area. So you're visualizing an area and you put things in that area. There's 4 steps to creating a memory palace. It's you decide a place. It could be your house, it could be your neighborhood, something that you're intimately familiar with, your childhood home, whatever. You define a path through that area. You have a bunch of items, and you encode those items in different places. You place them in different spots in that room or that house or that trail. It could be a map. I live in Batavia. So downtown Batavia, I know very well because I've walked through it a bunch of times. I could use that as my map. And so let's give you an example of what I'm kind of talking about so you can get a specific idea. The continents in alphabetical order. Say you want to memorize the continents in alphabetical order. Africa, Antarctica, Asia. You could just try and do it by brute force. Or we can create pictures for each one of these items, because we think more in pictures than we do in words. And so, although I'll use words in this case, but for Africa, we'll use a picture of a zebra. Antarctica, a penguin. Asia, a dragon. Australia, a kangaroo. Then we'll go to Europe, we'll do the Eiffel Tower. North America, we'll do the Statue of Liberty. And South America, we'll do a parrot. Now we're going to make these connections, these visual connections. So we're back to our room. And now I'm going to place those images in certain spots to create our memory palace. Our zebra, Africa, right? And as we go into the house, we see a penguin, Antarctica. And we get to the dining room table and there's a dragon on it, Asia. We go into the other room and there's a kangaroo waiting for us, Australia. And then we get to, first we see the Eiffel Tower, which is Europe. And the Statue of Liberty is hanging on to the Eiffel Tower. It's North America. And why is she hanging onto the Eiffel Tower? Like most statues, she's afraid of birds because the parrot is there, and that is South America. So you can take these images, place them your front door of your own house, in through your house, place them anywhere, and visualize that. Go over it a couple times, and you can remember the continents in order if you want to remember the continents. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything you want to remember in a list of things, for example. Things that will help you remember, by the way, are you want images that are vivid, that are unusual, that are outrageous, that are gross, that are shocking. These are all the things that make things memorable. I read it as I read the books, different books on memory. One of the things they talked about, like the history of memory, back in the classical times, even the monks, the early monks in Christianity or whatever, they had to memorize scripture. And to do that, they found some of the most shocking and gross and at times immoral images in order to stick those things in their memory. This kind of technique, this memory palace technique, is used by people who are memory champions. Now, this particular guy is Joshua Foer. He was a reporter who wrote a book on memory. In fact, it's my favorite book of all the books I read, Moonwalking with Einstein. And it really gives you the art and science of remembering everything, or at least how they do it. And he thought at the time that you needed some sort of special brain to remember all this stuff. How can these people remember these massive amounts of things? Well, it turns out, because they've been examined by scientists, that it's a normal brain. But people who are memory championships and go compete in the memory championships, they hack the brain. They use the way the brain works to be able to memorize massive amounts of information very quickly. They have memory palaces that are huge, have thousands of pieces to it. And here's some memory records, and I'm just going to name off a few of them as we go to the page, because they have, these are some of the different concepts they have. Spoken numbers. Each number is by a second, and how many they can remember in that, and so on. So, playing cards. They have 30. They have a bunch of. Everybody has the same decks in front of them. The decks are shuffled. They have 30 minutes to memorize as many playing cards as they can in order. The record for that is 884 playing cards in order. Randomly shuffled decks. Random numbers. Single digits. Spend 5 minutes memorizing these random numbers. The record for memorizing numbers in 5 minutes is 501 numbers. I can't remember certain phone numbers at times. Random words. Again, 5 minutes of studying random words. The record holder remembered 124 words. And what they do is, same with numbers, with playing cards, whatever, they actually take them in groups. Like, for example, playing cards, they may take the first 3 playing cards. Each one of those forms a letter, which forms a word picture. They put those words together, and they put those 3 pictures together in a certain part of their memory palace. And then they do the next 3, and the next 3, and the next 3, and so on. But let's face it, for everyday life, most of those memory tricks aren't practical. But a few are. And one of those things where you're putting things together like that is called chunking. Say you get a string of numbers that you have to memorize. Well, you probably do chunking already, because you can take this string of numbers, you can break them into smaller amounts, and you get a phone number. my phone number, don't call me. But you've all used this as a way to remember a number very quickly. Acronyms are really good ways to remember things. Most all these acronyms, I bet, except for maybe two of them, you probably know. Roy G. Biv. How many people know what Roy G. Biv is? You can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Okay, we had a couple people there. Roy G. Biv. Oh, we got another one there. Roy G. Biv are the colors of the rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Holmes. H-O-M-E-S. This is, I don't know if anybody had learned this one. Michelle, Susan may have learned it this way. Those are the Great Lakes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. The other ones, I'm sure you probably all know what they mean, but again, creating an acronym is an easy way to learn, especially if you can get it into sort of a word. The other thing we've used probably in school, right? Rhymes and songs, sentences. You learn the alphabet probably by learning the alphabet song. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. The one on the bottom is my favorite, which I kind of learned when I started researching these things. I don't know if anybody knows what that sentence tells us. My very educated mother just served us noodles. Luann knows it. Those, the red letters there are the letters of the planets. So very good. Yeah, Michelle and Darlene also got there. They are the planets. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. They had to shorten it, obviously, because Pluto isn't one anymore. Change it. Of course, we learned phone numbers here from songs, right? Everybody, especially if you grew up in the 80s, you were a teenager in the 80s, you know these numbers, 8675309, the song Jenny, Tommy Two-Tone. You could probably sing those numbers. You're Chicagoan. You certainly know this one. Jingles, very important for remembering things. You know, what would you do for a Klondike bar? You can kind of sing that. Best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. They're magically delicious. All these things are like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. That one we're getting a lot these days, right? We get that a lot. And so that's kind of stuck with us at this point. Give me a break, break off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. These are all things that stick with us in there. People of a certain age might remember the Good and Plenty song with Choo Choo Charlie. And I'm sure you probably are thinking of hundreds of commercials right now and hundreds of things that had a song and you kind of remember what that is. Very strong way. So if you need to remember something, sing it to a song that you know, the tune that you know. If you need to remember something, sing it in. So stories are a real strong way to learn something. So a study was done with college students. They were giving a list of words and they were asked to memorize that list of words. And they just did it, you know, brute force, remember those words. And about 13% words recalled overall. Another group of college students was given the words and they were told to create a story of their own with the words. Well, they remembered 93%. That's how strong stories can be. So if you need to remember something, create a little story around it. This is sort of a practical thing. Body parts can be a memory palace. How many people know using your two fists and your knuckles as a memory palace for something to remember? You can remember which months have the 31 days easily if you start on your knuckle, then with January, every knuckle is a month that has 31 days in it as you go through those. One of the things you can do, like if you're always wondering, oh, did I lock my door? Did I lock my door? Do something unusual when you lock your door. Then you'll remember, because you'll have that extra association. Remember, you need context and association to help remember things. That works. Let's talk about really everyday life. You know, it's just impractical to try and memorize every time you go shopping, to kind of memorize your shopping list. It's a good exercise, but it's practical. So you want to write stuff down. You want to make lists. You want to put Post-its. If you have to put Post-its on your fridge, on your telephone, on the mirror of your bathroom, so you can remember stuff. Alarms on your phone. So there was a story in Walking with Einstein about another guy. Oh, I'm sorry, not Walking with Einstein. The Memory Thief, which is another book that I use for this, in which a guy in a drug overdose destroyed his hippocampus was 10% smaller than it should be, and he couldn't form new memories. And this university wanted to study him, go through the battery of tests. Well, he decided he was going to travel to this university, meaning getting to an airport, getting on the plane, getting onto a bus, getting into an Uber to get to this university. Like, for example, on the bus, since he couldn't form new memories and would forget very quickly, every 5 minutes, he had an alarm on his phone telling him to stay on the bus and don't get off the bus until a certain street. So use the notifications on your phone. If you are worried about forgetting things, use the notifications, use the calendar, constantly write down, make lists, things like that. Repetition is always things. One thing I do in my life outside of doing these educational programs, I'm a professional magician. And very often I have assistants come up on stage to help me, people that I've never met before. When they tell me their name, and I've been generally bad at names my whole life. When they tell me their name, I repeat it to myself several times. Say it a couple times, even out loud. Oh, Mary, thanks for coming out, Mary. I really appreciate it. Everybody give Mary a hand. And usually that will help it get the stick in my head, that sort of thing. Now, if you have something coming up, like this was done again with students and a test, meditation. It's not about clearing your mind, it's about focusing your mind, meditation. And they found it will temporarily increase your short-term memory. And people who try to take tests, people without meditation, got lower scores than people that did meditate before taking these tests. So again, other practical things. You want to remember stuff. And one of the things about remembering stuff is having more attention, being present. You go on a vacation, you're experiencing all these things. You've never been to Egypt. You go to Egypt, you want to see the pyramids and stuff. You want to experience those things. Yeah, you take pictures and stuff, that helps. But you really want to remember being there, what it was like to be there. Be present. And use all your senses. Not just looking, smelling. Smells are very important. How many times you smell something goes, oh, that reminds me of my grandmother's cooking or the cookies that she made or any things like that. Smells can be very strong in recounting memories. In fact, they've done tests where people had to remember a fact, and then they said had a certain smell that they smelled for that fact, and then a different smell for a different fact. And later on, they would recall that fact better when they had to be able to smell that smell again. So in a way, being mindful of what's going on is think about it as if you're going to be writing a diary entry or a journal. You don't have to, although that will really help solidify your memories if you do it sooner than later when you want to remember something. But all those things, and write down the smell, what you heard, what it felt like, all those things. But you can kind of encode that in your head. It'll give you more associations, more ways to remember. So I'm going to leave you with something. And I normally, when I'm in person, I have a handout to give people. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you a website that'll give you a chance to download a handout for this program that's going to have all this stuff on there. Your brain can do a lot more than you think. You think, oh, I can't remember this stuff like that. So I'm going to give you a way of learning the impossible, or the almost impossible. All of you, I am sure, by memory, can say the alphabet forwards. But I wonder, by memory, how many of you can say it backwards without reading it? Well, I actually, because of this program, before this program, I could never do that. But I worked on a technique in order to be able to do it. And it's kind of a visualization technique. I can visualize the stuff in my head. Again, not a memory palace, but I used a story for this. And I can do Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. Here's the story I used to learn that. We have a very old, 100-year-old Viking warrior by the name of ZY. He's retired, just puttering around the house right now. And his wife wants him to go to the store. So she gives him a coupon. But getting on in age, he can't really see. So he's like, what's this coupon for? And she replied, to buy milk jugs to feed our cute baby alligators. Now you're thinking that is a weird story, but that's the point. Remember I talked about vivid, unusual, odd, shocking, anything like that helps you remember stuff? This is what you need to learn how to recite the alphabet backwards. So I'm going to break it down to a few simple sentences. ZY, X warrior, gives us the first 4 letters of the backwards alphabet. What's our coupon for? What's our coupon? Now, some of these will be corresponding letters. Some of them will be sound-alikes. Milk jugs gives us the next 7 letters. Feed cute baby alligators gives us the last 6. This is all you need to be able to visualize this. And to be honest, a weird thing happened with me. Instead of actually visualizing those pictures of the Viking and stuff, because I kept looking at a sheet of paper that looked just like what you're looking at now, I visualized this sheet of paper. I visualized this as a picture. And so I see the words in my head and I can do the letters. They all correspond that way. This is the cheat sheet that you will get on the handout. Practice this 5 minutes a day. Do it once or twice a day. After a week, you'll be able to do the alphabet backwards. The most it is a stupid party stunt because most people cannot do the alphabet backwards. But it also shows you how you can create a story to remember anything you want if you want to just memorize something. The last thing here is about really brain health. And in my mind games programs, I go into great detail about the things that keep your brain healthier longer. I'm not going to do that here because we're really butting up against our time and stuff. Everything is on the handout. And if you end up seeing my mind games programs, then you'll hear me go into detail about it. But most of your brain health deals with this specific quote here. The day you stop learning is the day you begin decaying. Hopefully you've learned something already today, which means I've made your brain stronger. You're welcome. The thing that keeps your brain healthier longer is new, novel, and different experiences. That's it. New, novel, and different experiences. Not the same old thing. Our lives are structured by our memories of events. Just as we accumulate memories of facts by integrating them into a network, we accumulate life experiences by integrating it into a web of chronological memories. The denser the web, the denser our experience of time. Monotony, the same old thing, collapses time. Novelty unfolds it. You can exercise daily, you can eat healthily, you can live a long life while experiencing a short one. Creating new memories stretches out our psychological time and lengthens our perception of our lives. And that's not all. Our ability to find humor in the world, to make connections between previously unconnected notions, to create new ideas, to share in a common culture, all of which makes us human, comes from memory. So take care of your brains and work on the things that help you remember more. That's my program. So here, last thing is, I'll put this in the chat also, is libraryprogramming.com. Now, I don't, by the way, I don't capture your email. I don't ask you to fill out anything. All you can do is go to libraryprogramming.com. There's a downloads page. If you scroll down, you'll find the download for, don't forget, the memory program. And you will be able to then download a PDF of my handout. So we had a couple questions in there. Learning plus movement helps memory. Yes. So one of the things I talk about in the brain health section of my Mind Games programs is how you can you learn new skills. And learning a new skill is great. Like, people like to strengthen their brain. They want to read and they want to do crossword puzzles and stuff like that. But learning a new skill like wood carving, I'll just tell the story. So I belong to my local library's writers group. And one of my best friends in there was an 80-year-old minister, lived in a senior facility. And at 80 years old, he said he was going to start to take up wood carving because he had a wood carving club there. Well, that was a great new skill for him to learn, because it's all about the, drawing on the piece of wood and then cutting, building the rough cut and the fine cut, and then painting it and all this stuff. But it was also the fine motor skills that his hands had never done before, which also helped strengthen his brain. And so, yeah, whenever you can connect an activity with emotion, again, you're getting more context, more associations to help create and to help strengthen the connections in your brain better. So yes, so any questions, you can throw it in the chat or you can throw it in the question and answer, and I'll be glad to answer them now. And like I said, I'll leave that up there so you can make sure you write down the libraryprogramming.com for yourself. How does exercise help memory? So one thing is just keeping your blood pumping. Physical activity is just good for your emotional health, for one thing. It also is good just keep things going. The things I talk very, very quickly. The things on the list of brain health are exercise. By the way, dancing is the best of those exercises, because there's a lot of stuff for your brain to do between reading the unconscious signals, being able to dance with people, working spatially, so don't bump into people. Great exercise for your brain, just strengthening your brain. Getting enough sleep. Lately, we have seen a lot of connections with good dental health and bad dental health. Bad dental health is connected to Alzheimer's, so you want to make sure you have good dental health. Learning a new language, learning a musical instrument, learning a new skill. Diet is a heart-healthy diet, is a brain-healthy diet. Those are all on the handout. Any suggestions on learning a second language? Your library has an app which will help you learn a second language. And so all you have to do is find out from your library, and they'll do it. So make sure, though, you use it. So people who are bilingual and use both languages often stave out the effects of dementia longer. And so that's really important. Alfredo put dancing. Yeah, dancing. And if you want to get new, novel, different experiences, don't just go line dancing. Go salsa dancing. Go tango. Learn swing dancing. Do different things. Just like a musical instrument. Learn different music. Either challenge yourself with harder and harder pieces, or learn different musical instruments. All of these will strengthen your brain. That's why people that travel to places that are very different, you know, you go to a big city, one big city is sort of like another big city, even though you're seeing different buildings and stuff. But if you go to Egypt and you're seeing the Sphinx and the pyramids, and it's a very different kind of city, you're getting more out of that because it's a new, novel, different experience. Any other questions?